Hello everyone, and welcome back to Anyone Can Learn to Code. In the previous episode, we started building a banking application, which allowed for creating a bank account and depositing and withdrawing money from that account. We also created an instance variable called money, which you can see here on line 4, that represented how much money is currently in the account. The deposit and withdraw methods, over here on line 7 and line 11, were very basic and simply add or subtract money from this money instance variable. We also struggled with a fundamental problem. When a new account is created, we need to set how much money is in the account to start. We decided to keep things simple and always start a new bank account with $0. To accomplish this, we created this setup method right here that created the money instance variable and set it to contain the number 0, indicating that the account begins with $0. Based on the way we implemented the bank account class, we're forced to do something annoying, and that is, every single time we create a new bank account object, we always have to set up the account by calling the setup method. This means that creating a bank account is a two-step process. Let's load up IRB to see that in action. The first step is that we create the object, and the second step is that we have to set it up, as follows. Here's the first step, where we created the new bank account object, and then the second step where we set it up. And that establishes that the account holds $0. It would be much nicer if, as soon as we create the bank account object, it automatically was set up to contain $0 without us having to call a separate setup method to do so. I'll admit that having to do 2 steps instead of 1 step isn't the end of the world, but besides the extra code you have to write, there is really another problem here. It's easy to forget to call the setup method after creating the account. And later it's going to come back to bite you because down the road, the owner is going to deposit money and will only be told by the computer that some error has occurred because it's trying to add money to the money instance variable which doesn't yet exist because the setup method was never called. We can see that in action. Let's create another bank account called account2. And then we'll forget to set up this new account, and then in the future, the account holder will try to deposit money as follows. He'll innocently deposit $50, only to be given an error. So arranging it in such a way that creating a new account automatically creates a money instance variable and setting it to 0 will not just save you some coding, but will prevent significant errors down the road. And the fix for this problem is extremely easy. All you have to do is have a method inside your class called initialize, and that method gets called automatically whenever you create a new object of that class. If we just renamed this setup method and instead called it initialize, it will get called without us having to call it explicitly. Now to test this out, we're going to print a simple statement to the terminal. We're just going to print to the terminal. There is now X amount of money, in this case it will be $0, in your account. Note that we have to convert this number into a string, which is what the toS method does, in order to successfully concatenate this number into this string. Let's test this out by reloading the bank account class. And we can see that immediately the initialize method gets called, and we print this line to the screen. There is now $0 in your account, and we can deposit and withdraw money right away. And it works. Now this special initialize method is also known as the constructor. I would have called it the setter-upper myself, but I was outvoted, and constructor is what it's called. Constructors are so useful that it's safe to say that most Ruby classes have one. You'll find that most objects need some sort of initial setup when they're first created, and constructors are the perfect solution for that. I'd also like to point out that this is the first time that we've encountered a method with a special name. Until now, you had free rein to name methods whatever you pleased, but now be aware that having a method with the name initialize is of special significance, and that it's a constructor and acts differently than most of your other methods. That difference being that the initialize method runs automatically when you create the object and you never have to explicitly call it. However, besides the fact that the initialize method is called automatically, in other respects it's just a plain method like any other method. And that means that we can do other things that we do with other methods, such as pass arguments to it. Let's say, for example, we wanted to give our bank account class a little more flexibility, and instead of all new accounts starting out with $0, we decided that a new account was created with however much money the account holder wants to initially deposit into it. And in real life, most bank accounts are created starting out with a certain amount of money. But the problem is that we can't just put some number in here like 50, because the dollar amount will vary based on how much money each particular account holder will be willing to place into it upon initialization. So how do we deal with this? Again, the solution is very simple. We can pass arguments to the initialize method as follows. So now we can pass a dollar amount into the initialize method. That dollar amount will be stored inside this initial money variable. And now, instead of saying money equals 0 or 50, we can say it equals the initial money variable. And we can see how to use that as follows. Let's reload the bank account class since we changed the code. And now when we create a new bank account, instead of simply declaring bank account.new, we pass an argument. And here we can pass the number of how many dollars we want to initialize the account with. So let's say a user wants to create a new savings account containing $75. It's as simple as passing the argument of 75. And now when we create the account, there is now $75 in your account. The more classes you'll create, the more you'll see how much you'll depend on constructors. Thanks for watching Anyone Can Learn to Code.